A mistake that lasted 6 months?
My name is Ethan Miller, and I'm about to tell you how I turned my cheating wife's world into digital ash. But first, let me explain why she had it coming. I'm 34, a cybersecurity consultant in Seattle, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect marriage. My wife Vanessa was, a travel blogger with 60,000 Instagram followers who hung on her every perfectly filtered word. She specialized in authentic couple adventures, which is hilarious considering the only authentic thing about our relationship was my stupidity. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The morning it all started falling apart, I was working from my home office, debugging a client's firewall, when Vanessa burst through the door without knocking. She never knocked anymore. "Ethan, we need to talk about Lucas coming to stay with us," she announced, not looking up from her phone. Lucas Grant, her photographer. 28 years old, drives a yellow Jeep Wrangler, and has the kind of artificially weathered good looks that make middle-aged women comment fire emojis on his shirtless hiking photos. He'd been collaborating with Vanessa for 6 months, and I'd watched their professional relationship get increasingly unprofessional. "Stay with us? For how long?" I asked, minimizing my work screen. "Just a few weeks while he transitions between apartments. He's been such an amazing creative partner, and he's going through a rough patch financially." Creative partner. Right. I'd seen their creative partnership up close, the way she laughed too hard at his jokes, how she'd started wearing makeup to their business meetings, the inside jokes that excluded me completely. "Vanessa, our apartment barely fits 2 people. Where exactly would Lucas sleep?" She finally looked up from her phone, irritation flashing across her face. "God, Ethan, why do you have to make everything difficult? He can use the couch. It's temporary." "I work from home. I need quiet. Having someone camping in our living room..." "You're being selfish," she cut me off. "Lucas is family to me. He's helped grow my brand more in 6 months than you've supported it in 3 years. Family." The word hit like a slap. I'd been supporting her blogging financially since day one, covering our rent and expenses while she built her following, but apparently that didn't count as support. "Fine," I said, "but I want a timeline. 2 weeks maximum." She was already texting, probably telling Lucas the good news. "Sure, whatever, 2 weeks. That was a lie, of course, but I didn't know it yet. Lucas moved in the next day with 2 duffel bags and an attitude that immediately grated on me. He treated our apartment like his personal studio, leaving camera equipment scattered around, taking hour-long showers, and eating food I'd bought without asking. But the worst part was watching him with Vanessa. They had this easy intimacy that made me feel like a stranger in my own home. Whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, shared glances across the dinner table, the way she'd touch his arm when she laughed at his stories about rock climbing in Oregon or surfing in California. "Ethan's such a homebody," she told him one evening while I was washing dishes. "He thinks adventure means trying a new coffee shop." They both laughed. I kept scrubbing the same plate until I thought I might break it. 2 weeks became 3, then 4. Every time I brought up Lucas leaving, Vanessa had an excuse. His apartment fell through. He was between gigs. He was helping her plan a big content series that could really boost her numbers. Meanwhile, my work was suffering. Conference calls interrupted by their loud planning sessions. Client timelines missed because I couldn't concentrate with Lucas sprawled on my couch, editing photos and taking calls with other influencers. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in late October. I'd had a brutal day trying to patch a security breach for a healthcare client, and I came out of my office to find Vanessa and Lucas on the couch, her laptop open between them, planning what looked like a romantic getaway. "So we'll do sunrise shots at Crater Lake, then drive down to the coast for golden hour," Lucas was saying, his hand resting casually on her knee. "That sounds perfect," Vanessa breathed, leaning closer to look at his screen. "Just the 2 of us, creating something beautiful." I cleared my throat. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. "Working on a new project?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Oh yeah," Vanessa said, not meeting my eyes. "Lucas had this amazing idea for a Pacific Northwest series. Very artistic, very authentic." "Sounds expensive," I said. "Ooh, who's funding this authentic art project?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, but Vanessa's expression hardened. "It's an investment in my career, Ethan. Something you'd understand if you ever took risks instead of hiding behind your computer all day." "I'm not hiding. I'm working. Someone has to pay for this apartment and your authentic adventures." God, you're such a martyr, she snapped. Maybe if you supported my dreams instead of constantly questioning every decision? I do support your dreams. I've been supporting them for 3 years, while you figure out how to monetize taking selfies. Lucas stood up abruptly. Maybe I should give you two some privacy. No, stay, Vanessa said quickly, grabbing his hand. Ethan was just leaving. I stared at their joined hands, something cold and hard forming in my chest. Actually, I was going to suggest we all sit down and figure out a timeline for Lucas to find his own place. It's been over a month. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Vanessa said, her voice rising. Everything has to be on your timeline, your terms. Lucas is helping me build something important, and all you can think about is your precious routine. What I'm thinking about is having my home back, and my wife. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Lucas looked between us, clearly uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to leave. Your wife? Vanessa's voice was dangerously quiet. I'm not your possession, Ethan. I'm a person with my own goals and relationships. Relationships, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? She stood up so fast the laptop nearly slid off the couch. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not blind, Vanessa. I see how you two look at each other. I hear the whispered conversations. I watch you get dressed up for your business meetings like you're going on dates. You're paranoid, she said, but her cheeks were flushed. Lucas and I work together. We're building a brand. Just because you don't understand creative collaboration... Creative collaboration, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you call it when you come home at 2 a.m. smelling like his cologne? Lucas finally spoke up. Hey, man, I think you're misunderstanding. I'm not talking to you, I said, not taking my eyes off Vanessa. I'm talking to my wife, who apparently has a lot to explain. I don't owe you explanations for my friendships, Vanessa shot back. Maybe if you weren't so insecure and controlling, you'd understand that I need people in my life who actually encourage my ambitions. Encourage your ambitions, or encourage you to forget you're married? The accusation hung between us like a loaded gun. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Vanessa grabbed her purse and jacket. I don't have to listen to this. Lucas, let's go get dinner, somewhere we can actually have a conversation without paranoid accusations. They left together, and I stood in my living room listening to the echo of the slammed door. That's when I noticed Vanessa's phone on the coffee table, forgotten in her rush to escape. I stared at it for a long time, knowing that looking would cross a line I couldn't uncross, but I also knew that not looking would drive me insane. The phone wasn't locked. The first thing I saw was a text thread with Lucas from that afternoon. Lucas. Can't wait to get away this weekend. Just us, no distractions. Vanessa. I know. I'm so tired of pretending everything's normal at home. Lucas. He suspects something. Vanessa. Let him suspect. After this weekend, it won't matter anyway. My hands were shaking as I scrolled up through weeks of messages. Plans for secret meetups, complaints about my boring personality, detailed discussions of their physical relationship that made my stomach turn. But the worst was a message from 3 days ago. Vanessa. I can't keep living this lie. Ethan's such a pathetic excuse for a husband. All he does is work and worry about money. You make me feel alive again. Lucas. Soon, babe. After the Oregon trip, we'll figure out how to handle the divorce. You deserve so much better than him. I set the phone down carefully, afraid I might throw it against the wall. They were planning to leave me. Had probably been planning it for weeks. And I was the pathetic husband, too stupid to see what was happening in my own home. But here's the thing about cybersecurity work. It teaches you to think systematically about problems, to find vulnerabilities and exploit them, to build defenses and tear them down. As I sat there in my empty apartment, listening to the rain start against the windows, I began to think about Vanessa and Lucas's vulnerabilities, their digital footprints, their public personas built on lies and carefully curated images. They thought I was pathetic, boring, just a guy who hid behind his computer all day. They had no idea what I could do from behind that computer. By the time they came home, laughing and whispering in the hallway, I was back in my office with the door closed, working late on a client project. Vanessa's phone was exactly where she'd left it, but I'd already downloaded everything I needed. The war was about to begin, and they just handed me the ammunition. The next morning, I woke up with crystal clarity about what I needed to do. Vanessa was in the shower, and Lucas was making himself coffee in my kitchen like he owned the place. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began documenting everything. Screenshots of text messages, downloaded photos from Lucas's cloud storage that he'd carelessly left logged in on Vanessa's laptop, email threads between them discussing their business trips, that were clearly personal getaways. Financial records showing Vanessa had been using our joint account to pay for hotel rooms and expensive dinners for two. The evidence painted a picture of a months-long affair disguised as professional collaboration. But more than that, it revealed something that would be their downfall. They'd been defrauding sponsors. Vanessa's brand was built on authentic couple content with me. Her biggest sponsors, outdoor gear companies, travel services, lifestyle brands, were paying her premium rates because she sold herself as half of an adventurous married couple. Meanwhile, she was creating fake content with Lucas, using our marriage as a marketing tool while planning to divorce me. That was fraud, breach of contract. And I had documented proof. I was so absorbed in building my case that I didn't hear Lucas approach until he knocked on my office door. "Hey, Ethan, can we talk?" I minimized my screens and turned around. He was holding 2 cups of coffee, looking uncharacteristically serious. "What's up?" I asked, accepting the coffee but not inviting him to sit. I wanted to clear the air about last night. I think there might be some misunderstandings about my relationship with Vanessa. I almost laughed. He was going to try to gaslight me while I had screenshots of their sexts on my hard drive. "Oh? What kind of misunderstandings?" "Look, I know it might seem like we're close, but it's purely professional. She's helping me build my photography business, and I'm helping her create better content. That's all." He was a terrible liar. His eyes kept darting away from mine, and he was gripping his coffee cup so tightly his knuckles were white. "I appreciate you clarifying that," I said evenly. "So when you two go on these weekend trips, that's just work?" "Exactly. Content creation requires a lot of planning and coordination. Sometimes we have to travel to get the right shots." "And the late-night strategy sessions in her car?" A flicker of panic crossed his face. "We're both night owls. Sometimes inspiration strikes at weird hours." I nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. I'm sure Vanessa's sponsors appreciate all the hard work you both put into maintaining her authentic married couple brand." Now he looked genuinely confused. "Her what?" "Her brand. You know, the whole adventures with my amazing husband angle that her biggest sponsors pay premium rates for. The authentic marriage content that's made her so successful." The color drained from his face as he realized what I was implying. If Vanessa was being paid to create content as a married woman having adventures with her husband, but she was actually having affairs and planning a divorce, that was fraud. I don't know anything about her sponsor contracts," he stammered. "Of course not. You're just the photographer, right? Purely professional." He set down his coffee and backed toward the door. "I should let you get back to work." "Actually, Lucas, since we're clearing the air, I do have one more question." He paused, looking like he wanted to run. "When exactly are you planning to move out?" Vanessa said we could discuss." "I'm not discussing anything with Vanessa. I'm asking you directly. When are you leaving my apartment?" The friendly mask finally slipped completely. "Look, man, I know this situation is awkward, but Vanessa and I have work to do. Important work. Maybe you could be a little more supportive of your wife's career." "Support her career by letting her boyfriend live in my home?" "I'm not her boyfriend," he said quickly, too quickly. "Right. You're her creative partner who she takes romantic weekend trips with and texts until 2 in the morning. Totally professional." He straightened up, some of his cocky confidence returning. "You know what, Ethan? Maybe if you paid more attention to your wife's needs, instead of hiding in this office all day, she wouldn't need other people to help her feel fulfilled." There it was, the real Lucas finally showing himself. "Other people," I repeated. "Is that what you call yourself?" "I call myself someone who believes in Vanessa's dreams, someone who sees her potential and wants to help her achieve it, someone who makes her happy, someone who's helping her commit fraud against her sponsors while planning to destroy her marriage." His face went white again. "I don't know what you think you know. I know exactly what I know. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" We stared at each other for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away without another word. 20 minutes later, I heard heated whispers from the living room, followed by the front door slamming. Through my office window, I watched Lucas throw his bags into his yellow Jeep and drive away. Vanessa appeared in my doorway a few minutes later, her face flushed with anger. "What did you say to Lucas?" "We had a conversation about his living situation." "He just packed up and left, Ethan. What did you threaten him with?" I turned to face her fully. "I didn't threaten anyone. I just asked some questions about his relationship with you and your business practices." "My business practices?" "Your sponsor contracts specifically. The ones that pay you to create authentic married couple content while you're having an affair and planning a divorce." She went very still. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Vanessa, I've seen your phone. I've seen the messages, the photos, the hotel receipts. I know about the weekend trips, the late-night meetings, all of it. For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Then something shifted in her expression, and I saw a hardness I'd never noticed before. So what if you have? What are you going to do about it? The question caught me off guard. I'd expected tears, apologies, explanations, not this cold defiance. I'm going to protect myself, I said finally. Protect yourself how? However I need to. She laughed, but there was no warmth in it. You think you can control me with threats? You think I'm going to stay trapped in this boring marriage because you found some text messages? I think you're going to face the consequences of your choices. My choices? Her voice was rising. My choice to finally find someone who appreciates me? My choice to build something meaningful instead of settling for this mediocre life you've trapped me in? Your choice to commit fraud while planning to abandon your marriage. I'm not abandoning anything. I'm escaping. From you, from the suffocating apartment, from your constant need to control everything I do. Control you? I've supported your dreams for 3 years while you figured out how to make money taking pictures of coffee cups. Supported me? She was shouting now. You've tolerated me. There's a difference. Lucas actually believes in what I'm doing. He sees my potential. Lucas sees an opportunity to sleep with a married woman and get free travel. She slapped me. The sound echoed in the small room like a gunshot. Don't you dare, she hissed. Don't you dare minimize what Lucas and I have just because you're too pathetic to keep your own wife interested. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting. Something cold and final settled in my chest. You're right, I said quietly. I am pathetic. I was pathetic enough to believe you when you said you loved me. Pathetic enough to support your dreams while you planned to destroy our marriage. Pathetic enough to let another man live in my home while he seduced my wife. She was breathing hard, her eyes bright with anger and something that might have been relief. But here's the thing about pathetic guys like me, Vanessa. We're usually pretty good at documentation, at building cases, at protecting our assets. What's that supposed to mean? It means you should probably call a lawyer and maybe warn Lucas that his photography business is about to get very complicated. I turned back to my computer, effectively dismissing her. After a moment, I heard her leave, slamming the door behind her. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to my divorce attorney. Then I started a new project folder on my desktop and labeled it Operation Firewall. If Vanessa thought I was pathetic, she was about to learn just how dangerous a pathetic man with cybersecurity skills could be. The war had officially begun. My divorce lawyer, Sarah Pierce, had the kind of sharp intelligence that made me understand why she charged $400 an hour. Her office overlooked Elliott Bay, and she sat behind a glass desk that probably cost more than most people's cars. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. Your wife has been conducting an affair while using your marriage as a marketing tool for her influencer business, and you have documented evidence of both the affair and the fraudulent sponsor relationships. That's correct. And you want to file for divorce while simultaneously exposing the fraud to her sponsors. I want to protect my assets and ensure she faces appropriate consequences for her actions. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying me with interest. Ethan, I have to ask, are you looking for a divorce or are you looking for revenge? I'm looking for justice. Those aren't always the same thing. She tapped her pen against the desk. What you're proposing is legally sound, but it's going to be devastating for your wife. Her career, her reputation, her financial stability, all of it will be destroyed. She should have thought about that before she decided to destroy our marriage. Sarah nodded slowly. All right, but I need you to understand that once we start this process, there's no going back. Your wife will know exactly who provided the evidence to her sponsors. She'll know you were the one who exposed her. Good. I want her to know. And you're prepared for the fallout, the anger, the retaliation attempts, the social media drama. I thought about Vanessa's slap, her cold dismissal of our marriage, the way she'd called me pathetic while planning to abandon me. I'm prepared. Sarah smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Then let's burn her world down. The first phase of Operation Firewall began that afternoon. While Sarah filed the divorce papers, I started reaching out to Vanessa's sponsors. Not directly, that would have been too obvious. Instead, I created an anonymous email account and began sending carefully worded tips about potential contract violations by one of their sponsored influencers. To Mountain Peak Outdoor Gear, I sent screenshots of Vanessa's posts featuring their products alongside images of her with Lucas, noting that her bio still claimed she was adventuring with my amazing husband, while the photos clearly showed her with another man. To Wanderlust Travel Services, I forwarded email threads showing Vanessa booking romantic getaways for two while claiming them as business expenses for married couple content creation. To Authentic Life Lifestyle brand, I provided evidence that their sponsored date night with my husband posts were actually photos from Vanessa's affair, with Lucas cropped out or positioned to look like me from behind. Each email was factual, professional, and devastating. I wasn't making accusations. I was simply providing documentation and letting the sponsors draw their own conclusions. The response was swift and brutal. By Friday afternoon, Vanessa's phone was ringing constantly. She'd been staying at Lucas's new apartment since our confrontation, but she came back to collect some clothes and ended up trapped in a series of increasingly frantic phone calls. "No, I can absolutely explain the discrepancy in the photos," she was saying to someone, probably a brand representative. "There's been a misunderstanding about the nature of my working relationship with my photographer." I listened from my office as she tried to spin the evidence I'd provided, but it was hard to explain away hotel receipts and intimate text messages. "What do you mean, immediate contract termination?" Her voice was rising. "We can work this out. I've been a loyal brand partner for 2 years. The next call was even worse. "Legal action for what? I haven't violated any contracts. The content I provided was exactly what we agreed on." But it wasn't, and we all knew it. Her contracts specifically paid premium rates for authentic married couple content. She'd been providing fake married couple content while conducting an affair. That was textbook fraud. By the time the fifth sponsor called to terminate their relationship, Vanessa was crying. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She appeared in my office doorway, mascara streaked down her cheeks, holding her phone like it had personally betrayed her. "This was you," she said. It wasn't a question. "I don't know what you mean." Someone sent my sponsors evidence of my relationship with Lucas, photos, messages, receipts, someone who had access to my personal information. "That sounds serious. Have you considered calling the police?" She stared at me with something approaching hatred. "You know I can't call the police, because everything they sent was true." "Then maybe you should have thought about the consequences before you decided to build your career on lies." "I built my career on content creation, on building a brand and connecting with an audience." "You built your career on fraud, on taking money to create authentic married couple content while having an affair and planning a divorce." She slumped against the doorframe. "Ethan, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, figure out how to fix this." "Fix what? Your affair? Your lies? Your plan to divorce me after you'd secured enough sponsor money to support your new life with Lucas? How did you—" She stopped herself, but it was too late. "How did I know about your plan? The same way I knew everything else. You're not as careful as you think you are." She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much damage I could still do. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to face the consequences of your choices. The sponsors are already pulling out. My income is gone. Isn't that enough?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find some trace of the woman I'd married, but all I saw was someone who'd been caught and was trying to minimize the fallout. "No," I said. "It's not." She straightened up, anger replacing the tears. "You're going to destroy me over this? Over a relationship that had nothing to do with you?" "Nothing to do with me? You were married to me. You were living in my apartment, spending my money, using our marriage to defraud sponsors while planning to leave me for another man. How exactly did that have nothing to do with me?" "Because our marriage was already over," she shouted. "It had been over for months. I was just trying to find the courage to end it officially. By committing fraud and having an affair. By finding someone who actually made me happy." The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "Well, now you're free to be happy with Lucas, without the complications of sponsor money or a marriage to maintain." "You bastard," she whispered. "Probably. But I'm a bastard who's about to be single and debt-free, while you're about to be unemployed and facing potential legal action from multiple companies." She turned and walked away without another word. I heard her gathering her things, making phone calls, probably to Lucas. Then the front door slammed, and I was alone in the apartment that finally felt like mine again. But I wasn't done, not even close. Phase 1 of Operation Firewall was complete. Vanessa's income was destroyed, her professional reputation was in ruins, and her sponsors were considering legal action. Phase 2 was about to begin, and it was going to be much more personal. I opened my laptop and began researching Lucas Grant's business connections, his family, his social media presence, and his financial situation. If he wanted to be part of destroying my marriage, he was going to learn what it felt like to have his own life dismantled piece by piece. The pathetic husband was just getting started. Lucas Grant thought he was untouchable. His Instagram was full of inspirational quotes about living authentically and taking risks, posted between shirtless hiking photos and artistic shots of his yellow Jeep against various scenic backdrops. He had 42,000 followers who bought into his adventure photographer living his best life persona. What he didn't have was a sustainable business model. It took me 3 days of digging through public records, social media posts, and cross-referenced financial information to understand Lucas's real situation. The adventure photographer lifestyle was expensive, and his actual photography income couldn't support it. He was living off credit cards, borrowing money from family, and increasingly desperate for a big break. That's where Vanessa came in. Her established brand and sponsor relationships represented a shortcut to the influencer success he couldn't achieve on his own. He wasn't just having an affair with my wife. He was using her as a business opportunity. But Lucas had made some mistakes that were about to become very expensive. First, he'd been inflating his follower count using bot services, which violated Instagram's terms of service and the authenticity clauses in the few sponsor contracts he'd managed to secure. Second, he'd been claiming photography equipment as business expenses on his taxes while using it for personal projects, including the content he created with Vanessa. Third, and most importantly, he'd been accepting payment from Vanessa's sponsors for work he wasn't legally authorized to do. Since the contracts were specifically for married couple content featuring Vanessa and her husband, Lucas's participation constituted fraud. I compiled all of this information into a comprehensive dossier, then began Phase 2 of Operation Firewall. The first step was social media warfare. I created a series of anonymous accounts and began systematically exposing Lucas's fake followers to his real ones. A few carefully placed comments about suspicious engagement patterns, some screenshots of bot activity, and suddenly his comment sections were full of people questioning his authenticity. "Bro, half your followers are fake accounts created last month," someone posted under his latest inspirational sunrise photo. "Why do all your likes come from profiles with no posts and random number usernames?" asked another. Within 24 hours, Sakura Lucas Grant Fake was trending in adventure photography circles. His follower count began dropping as people unfollowed him, and his engagement rates plummeted. But that was just the appetizer. The main course involved his business relationships. I sent anonymous tips to his few remaining sponsors about his fake follower count, his tax irregularities, and his involvement in Vanessa's fraud scheme. I forwarded his social media posts about expensive equipment purchases to the IRS tip line, along with documentation that he'd claimed the same equipment as business expenses while using it for personal content. Then I waited. Lucas's response was predictably desperate. He started posting long captions about haters trying to bring down authentic creators and fake allegations from jealous competitors. He doubled down on the inspirational content, sharing quotes about perseverance and staying true to your vision. But his sponsors weren't impressed by inspirational quotes. They were concerned about being associated with fraud and fake engagement. By the end of the week, Lucas had lost 3 of his 4 remaining brand partnerships. That's when he made his first real mistake. He tried to fight back. I was working late on a Friday when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know what you're doing, and it needs to stop. Call me." I didn't call. Instead, I screenshot the text and added it to my Lucas file. 10 minutes later, another message. "Vanessa told me everything. You're destroying innocent people because you can't handle being left. That's pathetic." I smiled as I saved that screenshot too. Lucas was creating evidence of harassment while trying to intimidate me. The third message came an hour later. "If you don't stop this campaign against me and Vanessa, I'm going to make you regret it. I know people who can make your life very difficult." Now he was threatening me. Perfect. I forwarded all 3 messages to my lawyer, then sent a response. "Any further contact from you will be considered harassment and reported to the police. All communication should go through attorneys." Lucas's reply was immediate and furious. "You're a coward, hiding behind lawyers and computers. If you were any kind of man, you'd handle this face-to-face." I didn't respond to that one. I didn't need to. Lucas was digging his own grave with every message, but he wasn't done. The next morning, I discovered he'd tried to hack into my social media accounts. My security alerts showed multiple failed login attempts from IP addresses I traced back to Lucas's apartment building. Now he'd crossed from harassment into cybercrime. I documented everything and sent it to both my lawyer and the police. Then I did something Lucas probably wasn't expecting. I called him. "Hello, Lucas. I got your messages." "Ethan." His voice was tight with anger. "It's time we had a real conversation." "I agree. That's why I'm recording this call and why my lawyer is listening in. Say hello, Sarah." "Hello, Lucas. Sarah's voice came through clearly. I should mention that attempting to hack someone's accounts is a federal crime. There was a long silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. The IP address traces say otherwise, I said pleasantly. Along with the threatening text messages and the harassment campaign you've been conducting since your business collapsed. You destroyed my business with lies. I exposed your business with facts. There's a difference. Those facts were private. You had no right to share them. Actually, Lucas, fraud is a crime, and reporting crimes is a civic duty. But let's talk about what happens next. What do you mean? I mean, you have two choices. You can continue this harassment and face federal charges for the hacking attempts, along with civil suits for the threats and defamation. Or you can disappear from my life and Vanessa's life permanently. You can't make me stay away from Vanessa. I can't, but the restraining order I'm filing on Monday can, along with the criminal charges for cyber harassment and attempted hacking. Another long silence. When Lucas spoke again, his voice had lost its aggressive edge. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You chose to participate in destroying my marriage and defrauding sponsors. Now you get to live with the results. And if I just go away, leave Seattle, stop contacting Vanessa, then maybe the criminal charges get dropped. Maybe the IRS doesn't get a comprehensive file about your tax irregularities. Maybe your family doesn't receive detailed documentation about your recent activities. You researched my family? I researched everything, Lucas. Your parents' address in Portland, your sister's teaching job in Spokane, your cousin's wedding photography business in Vancouver. Amazing how quickly reputations can be destroyed when the right information reaches the right people. You're threatening my family now? I'm explaining the scope of potential consequences. What happens next depends entirely on your choices. The call ended without another word from Lucas. 2 days later, his Instagram account was deactivated. His photography website went offline. His yellow Jeep disappeared from the apartment complex parking lot. Vanessa called me that evening, crying. He's gone, she said. Lucas left. He won't answer my calls or texts. He just disappeared. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, not meaning it at all. This is your fault. You drove him away. I documented his illegal activities and gave him a choice about how to handle the consequences. He made his decision. He loved me. He loved your sponsor connections and your established brand. Once those were gone, so was he. She was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Now you figure out how to rebuild your life without committing fraud or destroying other people's marriages. And us? What happens to us? There is no us, Vanessa. There hasn't been for months. Now it's just official. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my quiet apartment, looking out at the Seattle skyline, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Phase 2 of Operation Firewall was complete. Lucas was gone, his business was destroyed, and Vanessa was finally facing the reality of her choices. But I still wasn't finished. Phase 3 was going to be the most satisfying of all. The divorce proceedings began in earnest the following Monday. Vanessa had hired a lawyer. Not a good one, but the best she could afford after losing her sponsor income. David Morrison was the kind of attorney who advertised on bus benches and took cases on payment plans. Sarah Pierce ate him alive. Your Honor, Morrison said during our first hearing, my client has been the victim of a vindictive cyber-stalking campaign by her estranged husband. Mr. Miller used his technical expertise to hack into private accounts and destroy Ms. Miller's livelihood out of spite. Judge Patricia Hawkins looked unimpressed. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every divorce trick in the book. Can you provide evidence of this alleged hacking, Mr. Morrison? Morrison shuffled through his papers. Well, Your Honor, someone clearly accessed my client's private information and shared it with her business partners. Someone accessed information that was stored on devices in Mr. Miller's home, Sarah interjected smoothly. Information that documented ongoing fraud against multiple companies and adultery within the marriage. Mr. Miller was protecting his legal and financial interests. The alleged adultery is irrelevant in a no-fault divorce state, Morrison protested. The fraud isn't, Sarah replied, and neither is the fact that Ms. Miller was using marital assets to fund her affair while planning to abandon the marriage. Judge Hawkins reviewed the evidence Sarah had submitted. Bank statements showing Vanessa's use of our joint account for hotel rooms and romantic dinners with Lucas. Email threads discussing their plans to divorce me after securing more sponsor money. Screenshots of text messages where Vanessa called me pathetic and described our marriage as a boring trap. Mr. Morrison, the judge said finally, your client appears to have been conducting an affair while using her marriage as a marketing tool for financial gain. That's not victimization, that's fraud. The hearing went downhill for Vanessa from there. Morrison tried to argue that she deserved half of our marital assets, including my consulting business and our apartment. Sarah countered with evidence that Vanessa had been systematically depleting our joint accounts to fund her affair and had been planning to divorce me while continuing to profit from our marriage. Your Honor, Sarah said, Ms. Miller treated her marriage like a business arrangement that she could exploit for financial gain while pursuing other relationships. She shouldn't be rewarded for that behavior. Judge Hawkins agreed. The preliminary ruling gave me sole ownership of the apartment, my business assets, and our joint accounts. Vanessa was awarded her personal belongings and her car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic that was worth maybe $8,000. Morrison looked stunned. Your Honor, this leaves my client with virtually nothing. Your client should have considered that before committing fraud and adultery, the judge replied dryly. Vanessa didn't take the ruling well. As we left the courthouse, she cornered me in the parking lot. You've destroyed everything, she said, her eyes red from crying. My career, my relationship, my financial security. Are you happy now? I'm satisfied that justice was served. Justice? You call this justice? I made some mistakes, but you've ruined my entire life. You didn't make mistakes, Vanessa. You made choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to commit fraud. You chose to use our marriage as a marketing tool while planning to abandon it. Every consequence you're facing is the direct result of your decisions. I chose to find happiness with someone who actually cared about me. You chose to find a business opportunity with someone who was using you for your sponsor connections. The moment those connections were gone, so was Lucas. She flinched at that. Lucas's disappearance had clearly hurt her more than she wanted to admit. So what now? She asked. You've won. You've destroyed everything I built. What's next in your revenge fantasy? There's no fantasy, Vanessa. This is reality. The reality is that actions have consequences, and you're finally facing yours. And you? What consequences are you facing for destroying two people's lives? I'm facing the consequence of being free from a fraudulent marriage and a wife who never respected me enough to end things honestly. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. The anger was still there, but underneath it was something that looked almost like fear. You've changed, she said quietly. The Ethan I married would never have done something like this. The Ethan you married trusted you. He believed in you. He supported your dreams and thought you were building something together. That Ethan was naive. That Ethan was kind. That Ethan was being lied to, cheated on, and used. This Ethan knows better. She turned and walked away without another word. I watched her get into her Honda and drive out of the parking lot, probably heading back to whatever friend's couch she was sleeping on now. I should have felt triumphant. I'd won the divorce, protected my assets, destroyed her fraudulent business, and driven away her lover. Everything I'd planned had worked perfectly. But as I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot, I felt something unexpected. Emptiness. For months, Operation Firewall had given me purpose. Planning Vanessa's downfall had been consuming, energizing, satisfying. But now that it was essentially over, I was left with the hollow realization that revenge, no matter how justified, doesn't actually heal the wounds that made it necessary. I was free from Vanessa, but I was also alone. I'd won the war, but I'd lost 3 years of my life to someone who never deserved them. I'd proven I wasn't pathetic, but I'd also proven I could be ruthless in ways that surprised even me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Congratulations on the ruling. Dinner to celebrate? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Rain check. I need some time to process all this. Understood. You did the right thing, Ethan. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But as I drove home to my empty apartment, my apartment now, legally and completely mine, I wondered if doing the right thing was supposed to feel this hollow. I'd destroyed Vanessa's life as thoroughly as she'd tried to destroy our marriage. I'd driven away her lover, ruined her career, taken her financial security, and left her with nothing but the consequences of her choices. It was justice. It was proportional. It was exactly what she deserved. So why did victory taste so much like ashes? 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I thought it was over. Vanessa had disappeared from my life completely. No calls, no texts, no attempts at contact. Lucas was still gone, his social media presence erased, his photography business defunct. I'd won every battle and emerged from the war with my assets intact and my reputation clear. I should have known it was too easy. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday evening. I was working late in my office when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Heavy footsteps, multiple people, moving with purpose rather than the casual pace of neighbors coming home from work. I minimized my work screens and listened. The footsteps stopped outside my door. Then someone knocked. Not the polite knock of a neighbor or delivery person, a hard, aggressive pounding that made my door shake in its frame. "Ethan Miller, open up." I didn't recognize the voice, but I recognized the tone. Angry, confrontational, looking for trouble. "Who is it?" I called out, not moving toward the door. "Friends of Lucas Grant. We need to have a conversation." Lucas had said he knew people who could make my life difficult. Apparently, he'd decided to call in those favors. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, keeping my voice low. 911, what's your emergency? This is Ethan Miller at 1247 Pine Street, apartment 3B. There are multiple unknown individuals outside my door making threats. I need police assistance immediately. Are you in immediate danger, sir? The pounding on my door intensified. Open this door, Miller. We know you're in there. Yes, I said into the phone. They're trying to force entry. Units are en route. Stay on the line and don't open the door. I moved away from the door and into my office, where I had a clear view of the fire escape. If they tried to break in, I wanted multiple exit options. Miller! The voice was getting angrier. You destroyed our friend's life over some petty marriage bullshit. Time to face the consequences. Sir, the 911 operator said, can you see how many individuals are outside your door? I crept to the peephole and looked out. 3 men, all in their 20s or early 30s, all looking like they spent serious time in the gym. The kind of guys who settled disputes with their fists rather than their words. 3 men, I reported. They appear to be... The door shook as someone kicked it. Hard. They're trying to break down the door, I said, backing away quickly. Police are 2 minutes out, sir. Stay calm and stay away from the door. Another kick. The door frame was starting to splinter. I grabbed my laptop bag and headed for my office window that led to the fire escape. If they got through the door, I wasn't going to wait around to see what they had planned. Sir, are you still there? I'm moving to a safer location within the apartment, I said, opening the window as quietly as possible. One more kick, and I heard wood crack. They were almost through. I climbed out onto the fire escape just as my front door burst open. Through the window, I could see 3 large men entering my apartment, looking around with the confidence of people who thought they had cornered their prey. He's not here, one of them said. Check the bedroom, another replied. And the office. Little computer nerds got to be hiding somewhere. I climbed down the fire escape as quietly as possible, my phone still connected to 911. Sir, what's your current location? I'm outside the building on the fire escape. The intruders are inside my apartment. Stay where you are. Officers are pulling up now. I could see the police cars arriving, their red and blue lights painting the street. 2 officers got out and headed for the building entrance. This is Officer Martinez, a voice said through my phone. We're entering the building now. Can you describe the intruders? I gave them descriptions of the 3 men and explained that they were friends of Lucas Grant, seeking revenge for his business being exposed. It didn't take long. Within 10 minutes, all 3 men were in handcuffs, being led out of my building. I climbed back up the fire escape and met the officers in my apartment. The damage was minimal, a broken door frame and some scattered papers where they'd searched for me. But the message was clear. Lucas might be gone, but he'd left behind people willing to escalate the conflict. Do you know why these individuals targeted you specifically? Officer Martinez asked as I gave my statement. I explained the situation briefly, the divorce, the fraud exposure, Lucas's threats, and his subsequent disappearance from Seattle. So, this is retaliation for reporting criminal activity? It appears to be. Officer Martinez nodded grimly. We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow to file a formal complaint. These guys are looking at breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and intimidation charges. After the police left and a locksmith had repaired my door, I sat in my living room and tried to process what had just happened. For weeks, I'd felt like Operation Firewall was complete, like I'd successfully defended myself against Vanessa and Lucas's betrayal. But apparently the war wasn't over. Lucas might be gone, but he'd left behind a network of people willing to continue the fight on his behalf. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Ethan, it's Vanessa. I almost hung up. What do you want? I heard about what happened tonight. Lucas's friends, the break-in. Are you okay? How did you hear about it? Lucas called me. He's not handling the situation well. Where is he? I don't know. Somewhere in Oregon, I think. But Ethan, he's talking about coming back. He blames you for everything that's happened, and he's not thinking clearly. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Lucas isn't the same person he was when he left Seattle. Losing everything has changed him, made him desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. I was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Why are you telling me this? Because despite everything that's happened between us, I don't want anyone to get hurt. What we did was wrong, and we deserved consequences. But this has gone too far. This went too far the moment you decided to betray our marriage. You're right, she said quietly. It did, but it doesn't have to get worse. What do you want me to do about it? I don't know. Maybe we could meet, talk about how to de-escalate this before someone really gets hurt. I almost laughed. You want to meet? After everything you've done, you want to sit down and have a conversation? I want to fix this mess before Lucas does something that can't be undone. The mess is already fixed, Vanessa. You're divorced, your fraud business is exposed, and your boyfriend is facing the consequences of his actions. The only thing left is for everyone to move on with their lives. But Lucas isn't moving on. He's planning something, Ethan. Something bad. Then maybe you should call the police instead of me. The police can't stop him if he's determined to get revenge, but maybe you can. How? By being the bigger person. By showing him that you're done fighting, that you've won, and you're willing to let it end here. I stared at my broken door frame, thinking about the 3 men who'd just tried to break into my apartment on Lucas's behalf. It's too late for that, I said finally. Lucas made his choice when he sent those men after me. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Ethan, please. I hung up. But Vanessa's warning stuck with me. Lucas was planning something, and tonight's break-in was probably just the beginning. I spent the rest of the evening upgrading my apartment's security system, installing additional cameras, and researching private security services. If Lucas wanted to escalate this conflict, I was going to be ready. The pathetic husband was done being a target. It was time to end this war permanently. Lucas Grant made his final mistake on a Friday night in December, exactly 4 months after I'd first discovered Vanessa's betrayal. I was working late in my newly fortified home office when my security system alerted me to movement in the building's parking garage. The cameras I'd installed showed a familiar yellow Jeep Wrangler pulling into a visitor space. Lucas was back. I watched him sit in his vehicle for several minutes, apparently gathering courage or finalizing his plan. He looked different, thinner, more desperate, with the hollow-eyed appearance of someone who'd been living on anger and obsession for too long. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Time to finish this face-to-face. Come down to the garage alone or I start breaking windows until you do. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Officer Martinez, along with a note that Lucas Grant had returned and was making threats. Then I activated the recording function on my phone and headed for the elevator. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet. Lucas was standing next to his Jeep, and I could see he'd been living in it. The back seat was full of camping gear, clothes, and empty food containers. "Hello, Lucas," I said, staying near the elevator with my finger on the emergency button. "You destroyed my life," he said without preamble. His voice was hoarse, probably from weeks of sleeping rough. "You destroyed your own life when you decided to participate in fraud and adultery." I loved her. We were happy together. We had plans, dreams, a future. You had a business arrangement based on exploiting her marriage and her sponsor relationships. The moment those were gone, your love disappeared too. He stepped closer, and I could see his hands were shaking, whether from cold, exhaustion, or rage. I couldn't tell. You don't know anything about what we had. I know you abandoned her the moment I exposed your scheme. I know you left Seattle without a word when your illegal activities caught up with you. I know you sent 3 men to break into my apartment rather than facing the consequences of your actions yourself. Those guys were supposed to scare you, not hurt you. Intimidation is still a crime, Lucas. Everything I did was because of you. His voice was rising. You couldn't just let us be happy. You had to destroy everything out of spite. I exposed fraud and protected my assets during a divorce. That's not spite. That's self-defense. Self-defense? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You systematically destroyed 2 people's lives because your wife fell in love with someone else. My wife committed fraud while having an affair and planning to abandon our marriage for financial gain. You helped her do it. Those were your choices, and these are the consequences. Lucas reached into his jacket, and for a moment I thought he might have a weapon. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "Do you want to know what the last 4 months have been like for me?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. "Living in my car, working day labor jobs for cash, watching my family disown me after they learned about the fraud charges? I want you to take responsibility for your actions instead of blaming other people for the consequences." "My actions?" He was shouting now. My action was falling in love with a woman who was trapped in a loveless marriage. Your actions destroyed both of our lives. Your actions were participating in fraud, conducting an affair, and making threats when you got caught. My actions were defending myself legally and financially. Legally, he spat. You hide behind lawyers and computers because you're too much of a coward to fight like a man. Fighting like a man means taking responsibility for your mistakes and facing consequences with dignity. It doesn't mean breaking into people's homes or making threats. Lucas stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him struggling with something internal. Then his shoulders sagged, and he looked older than his 28 years. She won't even talk to me anymore, he said quietly. Vanessa, she blames me for everything falling apart. Says I should have been smarter, should have protected us better. Maybe she's right. Maybe. He leaned against his Jeep, suddenly looking exhausted. You know what the worst part is? I actually convinced myself we were the good guys, that we were just two people finding happiness despite being trapped in difficult circumstances. You convinced yourself that fraud and adultery were justified because you wanted them to be. Yeah. He was quiet for a moment. I keep thinking about what would have happened if we'd just been honest from the beginning. If Vanessa had divorced you before we got together, if I'd built my business legitimately instead of trying to shortcut through her connections. You'd probably both be better off. Definitely better off. He looked up at me. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you just let us go? If you'd accepted the divorce and moved on without the revenge campaign? I considered the question seriously. You mean if I'd let you and Vanessa continue defrauding her sponsors while she used our marriage as a marketing tool? I mean, if you'd handled it privately instead of destroying everything publicly. Lucas, the moment you and Vanessa decided to build your relationship on lies and fraud, it was going to collapse eventually. I just accelerated the timeline. Maybe. He pushed himself off the Jeep. So what happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. The police are already on their way because you threatened me. You'll probably be arrested for intimidation and violating the restraining order. I figured as much. He didn't seem surprised or particularly upset by this news. Will you tell Vanessa I'm sorry for all of it? Tell her yourself. She won't take my calls. Then maybe that's your answer. Lucas nodded slowly. Yeah, maybe it is. We stood there in the dim garage, two men whose lives had been irrevocably changed by the events of the past 4 months. In another universe, we might have been friends. In this one, we were just casualties of choices that couldn't be undone. For what it's worth, Lucas said as we heard sirens approaching. I understand why you did what you did. If someone had tried to destroy my marriage and steal my life, I probably would have fought back too. But you would have done it differently? I would have tried to. He shrugged. But I'm not as smart as you are. I probably would have just gotten myself arrested faster. The police cars pulled into the garage, their lights strobing across the concrete walls. Officer Martinez got out of the first car, followed by 2 other officers. Mr. Miller, are you all right? I'm fine, I said. Mr. Grant here was just explaining how he understands the consequences of his actions. Lucas held up his hands as the officers approached. I'm not armed, and I'm not resisting arrest. As they cuffed him and read him his rights, Lucas looked back at me one last time. Take care of yourself, Ethan. And maybe try to find something better than revenge to focus on. It's a hollow victory, isn't it? I didn't answer, but as they led him away, I realized he was right. I'd won. Completely, decisively, permanently. Vanessa was divorced and financially ruined. Lucas was arrested and facing multiple charges. Their fraudulent business was destroyed, their relationship was over, and their reputations were in tatters. I had everything I'd wanted when I started Operation Firewall. Justice, consequences, victory. But standing alone in that parking garage, watching the police cars drive away with the last remnant of my old life, I felt the same hollow emptiness that had been growing since the divorce was finalized. Revenge, it turned out, was exactly like Lucas said. A hollow victory that left you with nothing but the ashes of other people's lives and the knowledge that you were capable of burning down everything you once cared about. I went back upstairs to my secure, empty apartment and sat in my home office, surrounded by the computers and security systems that had made my victory possible. Outside my window, Seattle glittered in the December night, full of people living their lives, making their mistakes, facing their consequences. Tomorrow, I would start figuring out what came after revenge. Tonight, I would sit with the knowledge that I had become exactly what the situation required. Not the pathetic husband Vanessa had mocked, but not the kind man she'd married either. I had become someone who could systematically destroy two people's lives with legal precision and technological expertise. Someone who could turn love into evidence and trust into weapons. Someone who had won a war by becoming someone he didn't entirely recognize. The firewall had burned both ways, just like I'd planned. But in the end, I wasn't sure who had been more thoroughly consumed by the flames.